You're on, Lindsay.
All right, see, it takes a long time when I do it this way. Hello, and welcome to the Science Fiction and Fantasy Marketing Podcast, the show where we help you establish your author brand, increase the size of your audience, and sell more books. I'm Lindsay Baroker, and I'm here with Jeffrey Poole this week. Joe Lalo is off on a cruise, so it'll be the two of us talking to our guest, Domino Finn. And we're going to be asking the questions like how to compete in the urban fantasy genre, which is pretty competitive right now. Let me go ahead and read your background here, Domino. He's an entertainment industry veteran, a contributor to award-winning video games. They shouldn't let me read. And the grizzled urban fantasy author of the best-selling Black Magic Outlaw series. His stories are equal parts spit, beer, and blood, and are notable for treating weighty issues with a supernatural veneer. If Domino has one rallying cry for the world, it's that his fantasy is serious business. Welcome to the show, Domino.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
All right, we had a few technical issues, so we're getting a late start tonight, but thanks to anybody if anybody was listening live on YouTube, we're here now. And hey, Domino, why don't you tell us how you got started writing and what drew you to self-publishing?
It's funny because I've loved novels my whole life. I was big on fantasy novels, D&D, Dragonlance, those types of things, even Xanth. Um, so that was always a love of mine, but I never had aspirations to be a novelist. So like my bio says, I actually jumped into video games, and for about a decade, I was in the game industry, programming, helping design a little bit, but mainly programming. And it was fun. It's a creative passion, but I didn't have the say to do what I wanted to do. And if you're a novelist, you can do anything you want, basically. And I kind of wanted to have more control over my project. So I when I left my job, I didn't even have a plan to be a novelist, but I was taking time to think what I wanted to do, what would make me happy, and I actually just started writing as a hobby, just as an outlet on the side. I didn't think I was going to do anything with it, and then I don't even know how, but self-publishing came on my radar, and I thought about it and decided, yeah, let's do a novel. Let's do that. So that's why I'm here.
Cool. And it looks like you published quite a few novels before you started your Black Magic series. Could you tell us a bit about how things went when you first got started compared to how things are going now?
Yeah, so my first novel was my first trilogy is kind of a police procedural, but it does have fantasy elements. There's a biker gang of werewolves, but I it's extremely low fantasy. It's not what you're used to seeing with urban fantasy, and I think I kind of I didn't think about audience at all. I didn't think about branding or how to explain the book. And even now it's a little tough to explain that series. But it's, it's very gritty, like a Michael Connelly, like a Harry Bosch, a police procedural novel. And I like the crime and mystery novels, but, then I have supernatural elements. And so I feel like the mix of genres kind of turn people off, because if you like shifters and vampires and all this high action and magic, flinging around, then these books they're going to be too low action. It's not going to be enough fantasy elements for you. But if you like a good hard boiled, police mystery, then I might lose you the second I mention werewolves. So I feel like because of that kind of mishmash, it didn't hit the right notes. And I'll get emails from fans saying they love the book, or they haven't liked werewolf books for 20 years and this one they liked, which is amazing. That's what I was going for. But there's no audience. The audience is not big enough to sustain me.
Yeah, it seems like most of us, when we start out, we're not really thinking like a publisher yet. We're just kind of writing the stories that we want to tell. And I have to say that if you'd made those romances, I think the biker werewolves are actually like a thing. You might
Yeah,
have become a millionaire overnight. I don't know.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah. But see, the thing is, I was actively not doing that. I was actively fighting against all of that. And I mean, I wouldn't even attempt to like romance because I would be awful at it. But um, that is, I was doing what I want to do, and I was not thinking about the audience. So it was kind of a conscious decision, and kind of just say, hey, this is me, this is my thing. But it's not. I've since learned that that's not the best way to sell books.
right. So when you did your next series, were you actually kind of looking at things, the common tropes and stuff a little more to see what was selling out there before you published anything?
I actually have another book, Shade City, which is like a standalone, and that I attempted to make it a little bit more urban fantasy, but I didn't hit it because that's still like a me book. It's about a guy who sees ghosts, and he's in Los Angeles, and he kind of tries to dispossess people. But um, even when I did that book, that was maybe the second or third book total that I authored. But even that book was not hitting the tropes, and I didn't even think about that yet. And I wasn't well read in urban fantasy yet. Like I did, I've never at that point I have not even read the Dresden Files. So there were a couple books like A Madness of Angels that I've read, but not much. So I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know what people did expect. So I have that old trilogy with 3 books, and then there's one standalone. Those are kind of the old books. And as I was finishing the last book of the trilogy, even before that book was done, I kind of knew, look, this book's not going to sell. It's not going to just magically take off. It's not going to magically make books 1 and 2 take off. And, I'm not just going to have that sudden success with the second sequel of this series. And, I did well with sales and cross promoting them. And I made money in a couple months doing that. But I just knew it wasn't going to be this career sustaining, book. So even before that book was done, that's when I did what you're describing, which is I by that point I was looking into the genre more. I was reading the Dresden Files and Sandman Slim and a bunch of other books, and I I've talked to people like Annie Belay. She had success kind of analyzing the market and understanding what people want, and I kind of did the same thing, and and did kind of dissect what I liked about the books, what I wanted to tell, and kind of did something my way. I tried to put my own spin on it. And uh, it came out awesome. And when I made that momentous day when I launched the book and made the post on Kboards about, look, this is how I'm pivoting my career. This is what I'm doing now. That momentous day was like a big, crossing my fingers because I had just launched the book. I had no idea when I posted that if it would be a success, but it thankfully was. So that's why I'm still doing this job. It's almost a year later, and I have an income, so that's a big deal.
Yeah, that's great. I think I actually remember that post on Kboards. I don't post there a whole lot, but I'm one of the lurkers. So
Yeah.
it's great to see when, and I know the feeling too, because my stuff, early stuff, never really stuck. I promote the heck out of it, and I did the permafreeze to try to get people into the series, and it works, and you can gradually build up a fan base that way. But it's super exciting when, you do your launch and your promo, and the book actually stays up there and continues selling by itself for a while. That's pretty cool.
Yes, it's amazing. I've never seen anything like that or experienced it anyway, because I saw it happening to other authors, but you never know, are they promoting? How much money are they putting into it? That type of thing. And when I launched Dead Man, I didn't put any money into it at all. It was a quiet launch. I did not blast it on big sites. I just launched the 99 cents for a few days and then jacked it up to 3.99, and it just caught in the store, it got sticky, and the Amazon kind of machine just started pushing it.
Yeah, that's awesome that happens. We're actually kind of interviewing you about 10, 11 months, I think, after that first book was published, and it looks like you have 4 out in the series. How have things been going since then?
Yeah, so it's been awesome. I think maybe there was a little hiccup, like the book 2 cover I needed to change. I think the cover kind of missed it kind of missed the genre. I wanted to have each cover be something completely different, but I don't think that works. You kind of need to show Cisco. You kind of need to show who the book's about on the cover. But I changed that and fixed it. And my books have not been launching into the top 500 or anything amazing, but I launched into the top 4,000, and they're sticky and they stay, and each launch kind of picks up all the other books. But I do notice, so I have 4 books out now, and the fifth one I'm working on. The fifth one kind of ties up the plot line, like the main plot line. So it's kind of like a big 5-book block. Um, so I'll be happy to do that, to get this book out, and I have a lot of fans who want to read it. But I have noticed that later in the series, launching a new book doesn't have the same pickup of book 1 and all the other books again. Like maybe Amazon's just more crowded. Maybe it's tougher now. I'm not sure, but I'm not seeing that same huge pickup as much. But my books, they've until the last few weeks, they've always been in the top like 8 or 9,000, and in the last few weeks, some of them are kind of between 10 and 16, 18,000. So I'm gonna need to pick up those Facebook ads or something. I don't know. I also don't release as fast as some people recommend doing so, but I'm. It takes me a few months to put a book out, and I don't know how I can do that any faster.
Yeah, it's definitely tough. I mean, if you can write a novel every month, awesome. All the power to you, but that's pretty unrealistic for most people listening that have full-time jobs and, you
Yeah, I
know,
think so.
yeah, writing's still a hobby. Even when it's full-time sometimes, some people just don't. That's it takes a special mindset, I think, to really write very quickly like that.
Yeah.
So do you think you'll finish it at 5 books and then maybe try a new series along the same vein, or what are the plans?
I'm definitely gonna keep going on with that series. I don't have an end envisioned for it. It's gonna be like a thing that keeps going. But I am looking forward to changing to starting a new series after book 5. So I kind of need that cleansing kind of moment to shift onto something else. So once I get book 5 out, it will give the fans what they want, and they can wait a little bit longer for something else.
Sounds good. And yeah, even if the first one doesn't launch into the top 200 on Amazon or whatever, sometimes this can be like a stepping stone. You've gathered a bunch of new readers with this series, and maybe the next series, not that there's anything not respectable about being in the top 10,000. That's making some pretty good money, especially if you have multiple books staying at that level.
Yeah, yeah.
All right. Well, let me pass you to Jeff for some questions, and then we'll come back and ask you some more on the marketing end.
Okay.
Alrighty, my first question I have regarding your series. When you're planning out a series, are you following a general, already plotted story arc? Or are you just writing each story as a standalone, set in the same world?
So for the individual books, I outline heavily. Um, I want to know the ending and the big plot twist before I start. The overall series, I like to have an idea of where things are going, but it's not plotted out. So how I get there and can change a lot. Um, with this series, I did have book 3 outlined, and book 2 was drafted before I released book 1, because I did specifically want the first few books to be very tightly plotted. Um, and I was always planning from the beginning to basically, each book is standalone and it finishes its own plot, but from the beginning I was planning on spanning multiple books to answer the big questions.
So, for instance, when you release your 5th book in that series, and I mean, can someone just pick up book 5, read it, and enjoy it, and be able to follow along, or is it recommended you pick up the other ones too, or first, I should say?
Yeah, so book 5 not out yet. Book 4 is what you mean. But yes, they yes, it's a standalone book, and you'll just need to be told some things instead of shown them, you know. So I do catch you up on the big points, but yeah, you won't get it as much unless you read all the books. And so highly recommended to start at book 1 and go that way.
Okay. I read your biography, and I have to ask about a certain part of it. You mentioned, quote, notable for treating weighty issues with supernatural veneer, end quote. Was that always part of your plan, or did you discover that was just a characteristic of your writing style?
I think it's just kind of how the stuff I write comes out. Like I said, I started with Michael Connelly style dark crime stories about like an alcoholic police officer who's lonely, and he kind of gets caught up in this search for the you know this biker gang, and even though he's not supposed to, he kind of wants to know more about them, and he kind of makes it his passion. He kind of gets obsessed with it, you know. So I've always liked to have a edge to my stories and to the characters and what drives them, and uh, rather than just have kind of popcorny action scene, you know, things blow up and then action scene. So I kind of want it to be something that when you finish a book, when you put it down, when you close it, you can reflect on it for a while. So that's kind of what I mean. Just because it's fantasy doesn't mean it's kid stuff, and you know it's not mature.
Very true. My last question for you. In your opinion, what are some mistakes you've seen other urban fantasy authors make that could easily be avoided?
Mistakes in urban fantasy, huh?
I mean, it could be like
I
covers. It could be like, not hitting the tropes. I mean, what I'm asking what your opinion is on that.
yeah. I guess what I would say is I've I've seen a lot of books that just have kind of tying into what we were just talking about, but I've seen a lot of books that kind of just have mindless action, and it's just a set piece followed by a set piece, and you know people meet and people do this, and it kind of feels a little bit like a cartoon or a kids show or something, and I think you know because I the Dresden Files is kind of the gold standard to me, and at least in the male protagonist urban fantasy. And you know those stories they try to explore his like dementia and his emotions and that kind of thing. So I think if you're not exploring the characters and you're just kind of using them to set up action and combat, then to me that's a mistake. That to me that's not going to be a good story. Um, Whether those books sell or not, I think they actually do sell. I think you can sell books fine that way because I don't think I'm the I'm not the end all be all of the audience, you know. But just personally, what makes a good book, I think you need to kind of explore the characters a little bit.
Very true. All right, let me hand you back over to Lindsay. We can start over on some marketing questions for you.
Yep. All right. I think I was doing that for Joe. That was Joe's yup. He usually does that to transition since he's not here this week. Yup. All right. We kind of touched on this a little bit, but could you talk about what you specifically did differently with the Black Magic Outlaw series, especially book 1, that you think is what helped it catch on and stick on Amazon right out of the blocks?
Yeah, so the first thing is it had nothing to do with promotion, like paid promotion. I did not do that at all. I basically just put the book out and it sold by itself. The one thing I did, besides the presentation, which is the main thing I'll get to, but the one thing I did was I launched it at 99 cents, and I only kept it there a few days, and then I bumped it up to $3.99. So what I did do, and what I knew I had to do, this is like what the post was about I made, and this was about how I changed things up, was I found out what readers want. I read a bunch of urban fantasy, so I knew what the genre was about. And for me, my specific answer was I needed to have magic. Like the hero needs to cast spells, and the world needs to be higher fantasy. It can't just be this low fantasy where something odd happens once in a while. Because it's kind of escapist fiction. You kind of want to imagine what if I'm in, what if I'm doing what I'm doing today, but all of a sudden like a vampire knocks at my door. That's kind of like the gateway that urban fantasy promises readers. That's what people want. So you need to kind of show them a bunch of high magic stuff. I also wanted to simplify the premise, simplify if I had to explain the book to you, how would I explain it? And it's the Dresden Files with black magic. It's a mage in a big city, saving people, but I have a black magic twist to the whole thing. And Cisco is a necromancer, and he uses shadow magic. And so, some people would think he's evil just by those trappings, but he's not. He's a good guy, and he's flawed, but he's a good guy. So I have that easy to describe book, the easy to sell book, and I put a good cover on it, which shows a tough guy, and it shows the gun, and it shows the magic, which explain pretty much the action scenes. And the cover is the feel, the promise that the book makes. And I made the blurb first person, which was not a thing back then, actually. A lot of urban fantasy traditionally published books would have like a first person quote at the head of the blurb, and then the blurb would be the traditional, blah, blah, blah does this, But I made the entire blurb first person, and I think it kind of stood out. I saw there was a high fantasy book that did that, I think 2 years ago, and it seemed to catch on, I think. But mostly for me, like it just inspired me emotionally. I just like got the feeling. I thought that guy was cool. It made me want to buy the book, even though I don't like read too many high fantasies these days. So I did my blurb in first person and tried to inspire. Basically, the way I saw it is I wanted the book to have a strong voice, and I want Cisco to feel like your good buddy who you want to hang out with Cisco. Basically, that's what I wanted to feel like, and he's talking to you in his kind of head. He's giving you his impression of things going on. So he's not just like a wise talker out loud. He's kind of talking to you, to the reader personally in his head. And I wanted to feel like that. And since his voice was so strong, I wanted to put that in the blurb as well, so people would know what they were getting. So yeah, it's kind of dumb to say blurb and cover and what the book is about, and just because we know that, but I did focus on those things and make them sellable, and I think that's why it sells itself. That's why Amazon just pushes it's the book, because the book sells itself. And I think that's the most important thing we as publishers need to think of.
Yeah, and it's a great cover too. For anybody who hasn't seen it, I will hope they go and check out the books. That's really interesting about the first-person blurb. Have you seen that more books in the genre doing that now, or do you think it's still pretty unique for your book?
Oh, big time. I mean, a lot of the tough guy urban fantasies that have exploded in 2016 since my book came out, a lot of them have the first person blurb. Some of them are very close in like structure to my blurb. It's kind of become a thing now, and I kind of think it was inevitable, because it was starting to happen in high fantasy, and urban fantasy is just dominated by first person. I think it's kind of inevitable. I think it's kind of like, why did we ever do it another way now that we do it this way,
Sure. And do you write the novel in first person also?
Yeah, of course, yes.
Okay. That does make a lot of sense, especially in urban fantasy. It seems like there's a lot of attitude a lot of times in the heroes or heroines, and it can be hard to make that come across in a third person blurb, that you're trying to do this professional blurb, but you do want to get maybe some of the humor and stuff in there too.
Yeah, that's exactly it. There's so much attitude in UF. So that's what I want. You can do it with a third person blurb, but why? You might as well just give the audience a taste of what the book is, and that's what I did.
All right, cool. That makes a lot of sense. I'm curious because you mentioned doing the K-Boards post and talking about how things were going for you. Do you feel, because I know a lot of people wonder, is like being on forums, is that a waste of time? Is it just other authors talking to each other? Or do you feel you actually got some sales from like starting a thread and kind of being helpful and sharing your process? Do you think it's worth being on there for the sake of sales?
I mean, I know I did get a lot of keyboard sales because I could tell by the Autobots. That may not have actually been a good thing, but I did get sales, and I did that first week. I was so excited that I was attributing most of my sales to keyboards and to the post blowing up. But when it kept happening, I think I kind of dialed it back and understood that the keyboard sales did not drive the success as much as I maybe thought they did. And it may have even messed me up a little bit because I had a bunch of like not UF also bots because of keyboards. But then the also bots kind of fixed themselves, and then that's to me also bots are the most important thing to have that continuous sales stream.
All right, cool. Yeah, I think I just wanted to ask that because I know there are people that spend a lot of time on those forums, and I always wonder, like, are you actually getting anything out of that, or is that time you should be writing your next novel?
So I mean, so that part of the question, I think if you're new to self-publishing, I think it's important to spend time with other people who are kind of picking it up and with people who are ahead of you. So I think keyboards helped me a lot in that sense back in the day. Now so much like it's kind of a waste of time. It's easy to at some point you kind of know what you're doing, and you don't need to spend every single day just checking the message boards as much. So yeah, it's something I'm trying to dial back a little bit myself. I don't have as much time as I'd like. So I'm trying to limit it.
All right, cool. Next question. I happened to read Chris Fox's Right to Market book, and he's been a guest on here a couple of times, and he mentions you and your book in it, kind of as an example. Do you feel that you wrote it to market? Because I actually feel like in urban fantasy, there's probably more female protagonists. Maybe is more common, with the exception of like Dresden Files and the Iron Druid books. What were you thinking? Were you trying to write to market, or just trying to kind of model yourself after some of the successful male protagonists in UF?
Yeah, so right to market is like a bad word kind of now. And the funny thing is it means something different to depending who you talk to. So, but it kind of gets that like trigger in. But I did consciously attempt to make something that was more saleable. I realized that people wanted higher fantasy, that they wanted some magic, that they wanted different creatures, non-human creatures, and that was my tendency, was to dial everything down to be very realistic. So I did consciously kind of change that and force myself to go another way. I also did know that yes, the female-led UF is a much bigger thing, but in traditional publishing, there are some like key male-led ones like you named. So that's kind of what I wanted to capture. So I did have a kind of subgenre in mind, I would say, but I did not write my book to be the most widely accepted book. I could probably, cut out some curse words to appeal to more people. I could do some things like Cisco's a little brash in the beginning, and I know that turns some people off. So there's some things I could have done to make the book, the lowest, like appeal to everybody. But I wanted to infuse my own style to it. So when you asked, did I write it to market? There's some things that I did do that would make it more sellable, but I above all still wanted to have some artistic, put my artistic spin on it and see my vision through. And that's why the books, they were so fun and they came so fast, and it surprised me at the time. So, and I know at the same time, Chris Fox was releasing one book and I was releasing this book, and we both had a big thread, launch thread. So I think the reason he ended up using my book in his right to market book was because his his other book was not written to market as much as he thought it was. This is before Destroyer. And so he saw the success, and he was busy doing the same thing I was doing, but behind the scenes, you know. So I think it's written to market to some extent, but what I did not do was copy other books or chase specific trends. I just tried to understand what UF was about and deliver like a packaged experience to a group of people that would like it.
Yeah, it sounds great. And it actually makes a lot of sense to me that you would maybe not go for the real popular common, everybody's doing the female protagonist with X plot, because maybe you're kind of hitting on an underserved niche. Like maybe there's people that read Iron Druid and read Dresden Files and like, why are there not any more like tough guy urban fantasies out here? And it might actually be easier because it is a very competitive genre. I feel like that out of all the fantasy, that's probably the most competitive out there.
Yeah, and that's why I do try to place my books as premium. Like they cost $4.99 now. And that wasn't at launch, but they do now. And you know, I have expensive covers, and my books take time to write, so I try to place them at the premium because I want to appeal to those traditional UF male-led fans that they can see my book and go, oh, I'll try that out, and come buy it. And so that's why I hope my Facebook ads do me good, you know. And I do think it was an underserved market in the indie scene, because most of the indies were doing female-led stuff, and now in 2016, this kind of tough guy, male-led guy with an chip on the shoulder attitude kind of has blown up, and there's tons of books like that. So and they're all selling well. So I do think it was underserved, and now it's a little bit more glutty.
That's what happens when you start the trend. You only get a few months before everybody notices, especially if you post on K-boards about it.
Yeah, 2.5 months I think was what my honeymoon period, and that was it.
All right, cool. Well, we mentioned you have a neat cover. I'm curious, did you know, it looks like you pretty much modeled it off the style of, you know, you've got the guy with the gun. Although I'm curious, with the gun, did you decide, was there any doubt in your mind about that? Because it seems like, I feel like swords are a little more fantasy and guns are like, I don't know, guns on the cover. I don't even think in the UK they'll advertise it if you have a gun on the cover, I think I've heard.
Yeah, I did think about the gun a little bit. For one, Amazon rejects my ads half the time because of the gun, so I can't do the Amazon ads. Although I have one running that they let through, so I don't know. But it is a pain, and I do wonder if it doesn't help with things like BookBub, which I have never been able to get, you know. And yes, I think swords were more popular at the time, but I think lots of UF is gun heavy, you know, and that's just what I wanted to do. I like the idea of like the shield and the guns and that kind of thing. So I did wonder about it, but I think showing the gun and the magic at the same time on the cover, I think it encapsulates the book so well that it's the perfect cover.
That's cool. And was that just a Photoshop person with kind of an illustrated background, or what is the style for that?
It's photo manipulation with an illustration layer. So it looks painted a little bit, but you could kind of tell it's not painted, but yeah, it looks painted.
Yeah, it's cool. Okay, a question about Kindle Unlimited. Have you always gone into KDP Select? Was there any doubt, or have you tried wide before and you decided to do KDP Select for this series?
No, I've been wide and exclusive, I think twice before I launched Black Magic Outlaw, and it's actually one of the mistakes that I made was I was completely exclusive, and the second time I went wide basically the day KU 2.0 was announced, which was like a week before it went live. So I think that would help. I think 2.0 would be better for my books because they're a little bit longer. They're not huge, but anyway, I did attempt to gain traction on other sites, and I actually had one good month on Barnes and Noble because of promotion, but it just didn't stick. It didn't stay, and those sites just trickled down to nothing. So when I launched Black Magic Outlaw, I basically went all into Select again, and no question, Kindle Unlimited is a huge part of my success, and is a a huge part of the success of a lot of these books, UF or military, space opera, whatever. KU just is a gold mine. It keeps you ranked up there, it keeps people reading the books. So I've thought about going wide, but I don't know. It's a tough decision to make because you basically can't take all your books out at the same time. So I might need to take like books 2 and 3 out for a few weeks and then take book 1 out. So I just don't know. I'm basically going to be looking at not making money for a month. But I don't know. Yeah, what do you think about wide? Are you mixed right now?
I have all my fantasy wide because I started out that way before KDP Select was even a thing. But I launched my space opera series last summer into Kindle Unlimited, and yeah, I've had my highest earning year ever. So I agree. It's right now it's definitely an advantage to be in there. And with my stuff, I'm planning to go wide with that series in 2017. So my regular readers can read it, but then I'll have a new series I'll be putting into Kindle Unlimited. So yeah, I agree. Right now, it seems to be the place to be.
Yeah, you had an amazing launch, and you released the books close together. Was it like 2.5, 3 weeks? How close were they?
Yeah, I did the first 3. I had them almost ready to go, and I released the first 2 within a week of each other, and had the third one about 4 weeks later. And it was really great. It was a new genre for me, so I was trying to stack the deck in my favor by doing the rapid release like that.
Yeah, so basically, when you have that kind of success, you kind of don't want to take it out of Select. But I'll be looking at what you're doing if I haven't done it yet then, because I mean, if the series has a definitive ending, then maybe it's okay. You gave the KU people time. But if I take my books 1 through 5 when it comes out, like I'll keep it in Select, put book 5 out, and then take it out. When I put book 6 out, there might be some KU fans who get upset. So it's a tough decision.
Yeah, it definitely is. And my 8th and final one will be out this Christmas. And so, like I said, it'll be the end of that series, and that'll be the time. And I'll probably launch onto the other sites with a box set and try to get a BookBub and have like 3 books at 99 cents to really kick it off on all the other sites, hopefully. BookBub has to agree with my plans, but that's the plan right now. All right, last question for me here is just, I noticed that you just kind of had a box set come out with a bunch of other urban fantasy authors doing a 99-cent, whatever, 8 or 9 novels there and also in Kindle Unlimited. It may be too soon for you to tell, but what's your experience with that? Because I keep hearing people say, oh, box sets don't work as well anymore. Are you able to tell yet if it's going to have some sell-through?
Yeah, so the point of the box set is not to get letters, and it's not to make money, which is why it's 99 cents. The point of the box set is 100% cross-pollination of fans. So it's short stories, actually. They're not novels. They're like 10,000 word stories. And each of these stories serve as a great teaser for the series. You could read that story first if you haven't read the series at all, and it will give you, it's a good sampler of a bunch of UF, basically. Another thing we did is we focused tightly on this male-led kind of tough guy niche of urban fantasy. So all 9 stories fit that. There's going to be a magic user as well, pretty much. And a lot of these books are a series that have exploded in 2016, that have come out in 2016, And we got a couple older standbys like Craig Schaefer and James Hunter, who were kind of in the scene beforehand. And but some of these books, they launch into the top 1,000, they explode, they sit there a while, and like you said, it was an underserved niche. So we're basically wanting to give that niche a sample of all our books, and we're kind of, instead of competing with each other, we're attempting to kind of, the rising tide lifts all boats kind of saying. We're trying to share our success with each other. And I've already seen, like, I know some people, like Jason has told me, some of his fans have said they loved my book. And if you look at the reviews, some people, my story. And if you look at some of the reviews, or I've gotten emails and they say, oh, wow, I got this for Pippa's book story, but I loved Cisco, and now I'm going to look into your series, So just from that initial kind of week of feedback, I think it's a success for what it will be. It launched into the top 500 as well. Did very nicely. Kind of slipped to a 15, and then now I think when the Autobots came in, it's sitting at like 1,000 or 1,100. So it's doing well, but I just wanted to kind of sit. It doesn't need to do anything amazing. I just wanted to kind of stay at the high rank and sell and just keep exposing fans to what we have.
Yeah, that seems really smart to make it very focused on your niche too, like the tough guy urban fantasy. And then, your regular books will be in the also bots for all those authors and vice versa. So you probably will get some long-term benefits from that.
Yeah, because I see a lot of box sets that it's just urban fantasy, and that might not be tight enough. And there's nothing wrong with that because some people might want a lot of difference. But I feel like there's a lot of comments that say, a lot of times box sets will have some duds in them, and they'll say this anthology did not have any duds. And maybe to some people it does, I don't know, but I think keeping it focused like that really nails the target audience and gets them excited about what we have. The book, by the way, is called Full Metal Magic. That's the anthology name. So it's on Amazon. It's in Kindle Unlimited. So it's doing well.
Yeah, I'll put a link to that in the show notes so people can check it out too, because it sounds like a great idea to sample a bunch of authors that way for only 99 cents, of course. And I love that it sounds like you all did original fiction for it. I think that's really helpful to get your existing readers to buy it, not, because sometimes if they already have your book one and that's what is in the box set, then they might not buy the set because they've already read
Yeah,
it.
that was actually exactly the plan. I always thought it was odd when if I put book one is Dead Man, if I join a box set with a bunch of other people and put Dead Man in that box set, how do I tell my fans about that box set? I'll tell them, oh, look, Dead Man is in the box set. You could get it 99 cents and get these other books. But my fans, they have Dead Man. They that's why they're my fans. So I always thought it was an odd marketing technique to do it that way. Um, And so, yeah, we made sure that these were all original stories written only specifically for this anthology with like a 6-month exclusive contract before we could do anything else with those stories. So basically, the only way my fans can get that story is to buy the box set. And that excites them when I email my mailing list. And so my mailing list buys the book and checks out someone, they might check out James Hunter's story and like his books and go get his books, and the same with their mailing list checking out my books. So yeah, that was exactly the plan, and it's only been a week, right? So I can't tell you how successful it's been, but I think it's going to be successful.
All right, awesome. I hope it does well for you. Let me pass you to Jeff for a few more questions.
Alrighty, my first question is, what are your feelings on permafree titles? Do you think it's still a viable method for authors to get their names out there? New authors, I guess.
I had book one in my old series, Permafree, for 6 months, and it got me a bunch of signups, mailing list signups and stuff. Although I took it off because it kind of lost effectiveness. I've seen a lot of talk about it not being effective anymore, but I haven't done it in the last 6 months, maybe. So I couldn't tell you too much. I don't have much of an opinion. It's not something I'm against on principle. At some point maybe I'll set Dead Man to 99 cents or free, but if I go wide, I think I would go perma-free. But yeah, there's no point to do it while I'm exclusive to Amazon, I think.
Yeah, makes sense. Now, okay, you've obviously you mentioned Facebook a few times. I mean, is that the primary social networking site you use? I mean, are there any favorites? Are there any that you avoid?
I have Google and Twitter and Facebook, and I have never logged into Google basically anymore. I think my blog posts like automatically push to Google, and that's it. But the Facebook page Domino Fin Books is my main social media contact. I think I don't use Twitter that much, but I do sometimes. But I'm not super chatty. I don't have a huge social media presence. I kind of try to stay quiet until I have something to say. So I'm maybe not as good as I should be with social media, but it gets the job done.
All right. And you've mentioned that you have yourself a mailing list. Have you offered any incentives to get people to sign up? I mean, what do you typically do if you want to increase your subscriber list?
Yeah, so for my old books that were not selling, I had book one free, and I had a note that said, sign up to my mailing list, you could get book two free, which is an amazing deal, you know? But then I could sell book three. But that's still giving away most of your money. And with this new short story I have in the anthology, I could basically, I think the plan is when the 6-month exclusive deal is up and the anthology gets pulled down, I think I'm going to give away that story for mailing list signups. Um, but until then, I'm kind of in this limbo where I don't have a giveaway anymore. I used to and I will, but now I don't. So I think I'm going to survive the next few months without a giveaway incentive.
Okay. That pretty much completes my marketing questions. I had another one about the titles being released with KU or going wide, but you already answered that for me. So I
Yeah.
think I've got all my questions answered. I do appreciate it. Let me pass you back over to Lindsay.
Thanks.
All right, we'll kind of wrap things up here. We did have one question from Twitter for you. SMH asks, she says, Domino's books are such original UF. Does he have any predictions for where the genre will go next?
Man, I actually think the genre is super mature. There's been so many books with it, and it's exploded in the indie market years ago. So I think the genre is kind of done what it's supposed to do, and I think if it does go anywhere next, it will be kind of what I tried to do with my original books, which is kind of more subtle magic. You don't need the vampires and everything to be in your face constantly, and you don't need the magic to be like glowing and lights in the sky. I think we can get into the realm of something more subtle and like nuanced, which is maybe like Neil Gaiman style. But I think I see some space for UF going that way.
All right, one last question from me here. Do you see, like, for anybody that's trying to break into urban fantasy right now, what is this, October 2016, do you have any advice for, since we've talked about it is pretty competitive and even your niche is starting to get filled up, any advice for newer authors?
Yeah, I mean, it's not as easy as it was a year ago because I've seen some even tough guy kind of UF. I've seen some launch well and then kind of sink into oblivion lately. So there's no guaranteed thing. The main thing the main advice I would give if you're writing UF is it doesn't have anything to do with male or female. It would just mainly have to do with voice. Try to have a distinctive voice. Try to give readers something they haven't seen before, something that makes them think of your book. If you can come up with that voice and kind of catch people with something that's a little catchy, then they'll keep coming back and buying your books. I'd also recommend releasing the 2 or 3 books close together, like 1 month apart, maybe at least. So if you can kind of hold the beginning books and wait until you have book 3 mostly done, I think that's good advice. And it also helps you kind of plan plot lines throughout multiple books as well. So I would say do that. And
All right.
also, yes, Kindle Unlimited for sure.
All right, great advice. Where can people find you online, and give them the name of your first book and your bundle there too, please.
So my website is dominofin.com. So you could find my Facebook page there and all my books there. My main UF series is Black Magic Outlaw. Book 1 is called Dead Man, and it's on Amazon.
All right, cool. And for anybody who's not at their computer right now listening, come on by the show, episode 104, marketingsff.com, and I will put in the links to Domino's page and his books so you can check them out. Thanks for coming on tonight, Domino.
Thanks for putting up with my thick butt.
Your thick butt. We didn't see that. You didn't show us that on the show. We've just got a headshot for those who are watching on the video.
I'm all healthy. I have cold medication, so I apologize.
No, you were great. I thought there was a lot of great information. So thank you very much, and thanks everyone for listening.
We appreciate all the info, Domino. It's nice to meet you.
You too.